You have to question then the environment of what does that even mean? Like, why am I in an environment that's not asking me to learn?
Exactly. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Conversation Piece, your place to discover the untold stories of Indianapolis through the perspectives of all of its wonderful people. My name is Patrick Armstrong. I am your host, and it is still 2025. That means that means it is still the year of community, and I'm not 100% sure when it is right now, what month, but if you have been connected with us, that you know that we've just had a couple really incredible community-based events. So shout out to the people that supported us there and who attended, who came out. And if you're interested in learning more about what we got going on the rest of the year, go to conversationpeacepod.com or follow me directly on Instagram at PatrickInTheWorld to get that information. Until then, I am super excited about my conversation today. My guest today is a cultural entrepreneur, creative executive, partner, mom, and amazing human being. While she has helped a number of organizations develop and incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion plans, she's helped an innumerable number of artists and creatives in this city through her work with GANGGANG, the cultural development firm she founded alongside her partner, Alan. Personally, I've been waiting for a long time to have this conversation, and I'm really excited to get into it. So without further ado, it is my great joy and privilege to welcome Molly Bacon to the show. Molly, thank you for being here.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for wanting to be present with me. This is a great way to have our first in-depth conversation. And so, yeah, thanks again.
100%. I appreciate you just making the time. I know you're an incredibly busy person, and I know that because I do try to do my back end research before I sit down with someone, which is how I came across your Wikipedia page, which I don't know if you knew you had.
I had no idea. And it freaks me out a bit. But when I remember that the Wiki team paired up with Indiana Humanities at Butter 4, and that's possibly why I have one. So I feel a little bit better knowing that IH maybe wrote what's there. But yeah, that is so strange.
Well, I will say I felt like it was a legit Wikipedia page because everybody can have one, but if you have stuff written in your early life and career parts, then you know that it's legit.
That means you've lived a long time. I don't know.
Or lived a full life, maybe.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Already? Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay, so I want to start here. I have a two-parter, and I think the first part might be a little easier, but I think the second part might be a little more difficult.
Okay, great.
So the first part of the question is, how are you?
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm a tiny bit nervous, but I'm mostly interested in my own thoughts.
Oh, okay.
Right now. So I feel fine and excited. And I feel really grateful because I'm sitting next to such a beautiful bouquet.
Yeah. Okay. The flowers always lift up the energy in a room, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Second part of the question, and maybe the more difficult part of it. How are you? Really?
How am I?
Yeah.
Ooh. The other day I was at a salon and I was with my stylist, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I have been building a business while I have been healing for the past, decade." And immediately I was like, "Oh my gosh, that I resonate with that." And she said, "And you have too." And she's one of those women who can see into you, right. She sees past your hair, and she's telling me about myself. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is exactly maybe how I'm doing, maybe where things are. I feel there's a lot swirling around all the time. And I'm kind of getting used to that. And I'm getting used to even a new pace. But the main thing, maybe the good thing, maybe where I am is recognizing my groundedness within that, my awareness of self, your
presence.
Being more conscious, being more present. Yeah. So I feel like something in the middle of a larger thing. And I'm really trying to pay more attention to, how I behave, how I think, and how I move as this kind of at the nucleus of something that feels so swarming.
Yeah.
Did that make any sense?
It made a ton of sense.
Okay.
As somebody who I feel like for the last 5 years, I've been on this journey of just trying to understand who I am as an individual while also trying to understand what that means as a professional or in a career sense. It feels very much in process.
Right.
And I think that I follow a lot of people who feel very much set in what they do. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I feel like if you don't meet someone and ask them how they're doing, like to know, oh, they're still in process or they're still working through something, you can kind of just think, oh, well, they've made it or they're good.
And we're always all in process, I think.
Right.
I mean, this is a whole life journey, and there's seasons to it and phases to it. And so I think it's really wonderful if we can check in with our own lives and say, okay, what's it feeling like this year?
For sure.
Or this moment, this decade, whatever. So thanks for, I don't know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm resonating
Thank
for
you.
sure. Okay. So I was wondering if you could find 3 words that you would use to describe yourself right now. Maybe you've already used one, which was healing, which I really liked.
Yeah, maybe.
But
yeah.
I was wondering if you could give us some of that context.
3 words to describe myself, not how I'm doing, but just
Not how you're
Molly.
doing. Yeah. In-process healing is how you're doing. Now, who is Molly in 3 words, if that's even possible to distill?
Molly in 3 words. Maybe introspective, maybe spiritually connected, or just spiritual if it needs to be 1 word. I want to say in love or obsessive or something about inquisitive about love. Can I have phrases instead of words?
100%.
Yeah, obsessed with love.
Okay.
And spiritually aware or aligned or in tune, and introspective, or just something that I point inward more than outward.
Yeah. Is there something that's driving you inward a little bit at this moment, or is that's just the season that you kind of find yourself in?
It's probably all the stuff that's swarming externally,
Sure.
The swarm is so apparent, and there can be so much pressure externally that really the only way to stay sane is to check in all the time and check in more often, and have a practice of being conscious with self and honest with self, and saying, how am I doing right now?
Sure.
What needs to change? What do I think about this? And really being comfortable with conversations with self,
Sure.
So I that is not unfamiliar to me, but maybe in this season, yes, because there's so much more happening externally, I am leveraging that practice more and valuing it more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the external is just like the stuff that's outside of our control.
Yeah.
And that introspection, we can always look inward.
Yeah.
Of course, we might be influenced by those external forces, but that's the one thing that we maybe have some control over, measure of control, to be able to turn the lens in a little bit.
Yeah, maybe that's also what's happening, even subconsciously.
Right.
I don't, I can't change that, or I'm seeing this, or I feel that. What I can control, is my response. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I'm in a similar space of just trying to understand what it means to be influenced by things that I have no control over, and then how that shapes the way that I move through the world. Because for the first 30 years of my life, if you don't know anything about my story, I just moved through the world in a specific way that was in total rejection of a significant part of my identity in my life. And so it took a bunch of external forces, as well as a little bit of that introspection, to be able to start on this journey that's led me to now sit down here and do this.
Nice.
But that all started, and all of that came about because of a key thing that you're involved in, but I think a lot of creatives are involved in, which is storytelling, and figuring out what does it mean, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons, among many, that I wanted to have a conversation with you is that this was months ago now, I think, but you had posted on your Instagram about wanting to be involved in more personal storytelling. And so, again, that was a few months ago, and that was on a story. It's not like living on the feed or anything.
Okay, so it was a story.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm bring me back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, in this moment, now that I kind of bring that back, this idea of personal storytelling, I was wondering what that means to you.
Ooh, I think that at the moment, or at that time, I was thinking remember early Instagram when people used to do, like, we would show everything, even the ugly plates, but also like, I'm walking to the store, like I'm going down the street, or I'm nervous for this meeting or whatever. And it feels like that went away some. Everything became so highly produced. And I think we got more gun shy about posting raw footage of whatever we were doing that day. And we just kind of started to criticize ourselves, like on a mass level, about like, why are we sharing so much or whatever. And so now that it's gotten to this other extreme, where it seems like people need to put their best foot forward, and we're talking about our best moments. I'm missing, humanness, rawness, and maybe the permission of that for myself and of others. And I want to encourage it.
Yeah.
Even yesterday I posted, my daughter is a track star and she won the 400 meter dash, and it had nothing to do with me, but I said, it wasn't easy to make the meet, like the track meet. Like it wasn't like, that wasn't an easy thing, and even me saying that, like, it's my attempt to encourage other people to share more of the more of the toughness and when we're sad and things like that, so that we can be more vulnerable and more connection can happen that way.
Yeah.
And so it was uncomfortable, but I think I'm just trying to do more of that for the sake of humanity.
Sure.
And maybe because it is not as encouraged, and there's even fear in the air now to be yourself and to talk about yourself and to be vulnerable and to be openly questioning. You know, there's, we are just generally not being encouraged to do that anymore. And so I feel like it's that much more important. And so I am almost always uncomfortable or awkward or something. And so I learned early on to just be okay with that and lead with it.
Yeah.
And so like, I'll go first, it's just kind of, that's just kind of the mentality. Like I'll, ask me something wild, I don't know, like just to practice and to let people know it's okay. And like, it's good to share. That's how we connect. That's how we grow. And that's how we break down barriers. Yeah. You said earlier something about like the things we can't change. I don't think that there's much that I can't change. So I don't have that part, so I feel like things like personal storytelling, whatever, just like learning a commitment to learning can help influence everything.
Yeah. Well, it's like that commitment to curiosity. Like you said, it's like we're in a time right now where it's like, if you ask a question, that can be seen as like a bad thing.
Yes.
And it's like, why is that? Like, I'm just asking a question about a thing. Right. Like, I would like to know more about said thing.
Yes.
Like, why is that an issue? And I think what I have really been inspired by the work that you do and the work that you're involved in is just that it feels like that lean into, I'll model it. Like, I'll model it for us to see what this looks like.
Yeah.
Because it always takes that first person. And then I have a friend, her name's Michelle Kim. She wrote a book called The Wake Up about diversity, equity, inclusion practice in the workplace from an Asian American lens. And she talked about this concept of the second courageous. So you're the first, so you lead. Who is going to be that person to then step up and say, yes, I'm affirming you in this thing that you're doing? Because that's how we then spread that idea amongst people to realize, oh, we're actually all in it together and we can do this together.
Yes.
And we can actually affect change because it's not all on one person's shoulders.
Yeah. We can take risks, like we can walk forward, and it's okay to say, I agree with what that person is saying. Like they're charging into some new territory. I get it. And I can articulate it to like everybody else in the line. Like the second person, as you're saying. I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to lead. Everybody leads, everybody follows. And that's like, it's a system and like it works. I don't know. It's a whole ecosystem of learning almost. That's what we have to like just encourage people, that it's always going to be okay to learn. Yeah. And so if you can't ask questions, you have to question then the environment of, what does that even mean? Like, why am I in an environment that's not asking me to learn?
Exactly. See, that's the thing. You stifle a question, it's only going to lead to more questions.
Exactly.
So, like, you're just setting yourself up for that situation. Another thing that you said that you talked about is like sharing vulnerably and openly more of what's going on in someone's life on social media. And I think a lot of a conversation we have a lot on the show is that now social media is, like you said, it's like we only see the end result. We don't see the end process stuff. And so we have a really skewed, narrow perspective on what a person is. And so the person then becomes the page, and they become less of that person, I think.
Oh my.
I was wondering, were you always affirmed to be vulnerable, to be like, to lean into that, to take the risk? Or is that something that you kind of developed as you got to like college and like were leaning into like the storytelling aspects of what you were pursuing?
Ooh, thank you for that question, because I'm trying to find like the transition point, because no, I was not really affirmed to be vulnerable. My like, I don't know, childhood is high school childhood.
I think so.
Okay, yeah, all of that part.
I think
when you're at home,
20 is basically childhood.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say 18 and under, 20 and under whatever. I was encouraged to care about what people think, for sure. Like, I was told to care about what people think because I represent my family and I represent my faith. You know, I represent my church and I represent specifically my parents, you know, and their values. And so they said that I should represent those, you know, and I remember like not being able to go to the Janet Jackson concert because it didn't, you know, because my parents were so concerned with the appearance of my presence at the Janet Jackson concert in 7th grade, you know? And so like that was what I was encouraged to think about most. You know, how am I coming off? You know, like how am I showing up? And so that is, now I'm realizing, even like kind of contradictory to me, you know, because I want to encourage people, like, be okay, whatever it is, like everybody, we're all okay, you know? And so maybe because of that, actually, I am the opposite. I don't know when the transition happened, but no, I wasn't affirmed to be vulnerable early on. And that's not like a bash or whatever on my parents. It's just, no.
That was just the way that they knew to navigate and raise your kids. Like, I was adopted, and like I'm going through like this whole thing over the last 5 years as part of my identity. But like the thing that I've come to realize is like, you know, my parents really, I did have a positive experience with them, and I do have a good relationship with them still. And like the way that they raised me in a colorblind, you know, household and community to think stereotypically about anybody who wasn't white. And like, even though I wasn't white, like we're still thinking that stuff about Asian people. It's like, how do I weigh those two things and realizing, okay, that was, when I take it within outside of the vacuum and I realize, and I take it in as much totality and as much context as I can give it, it's like they were doing as much as they could in a tiny Midwestern town that had no access to Asian American culture, Asian culture, or anything. They were also told that assimilation was the best way to raise me. So yes, this happened, and yes, this happened. Could things have happened differently? Yes. And that's why, like, that also influenced me to now be talking about stuff that I'm talking about. So
did you, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Did you influence your parents then in their thinking? Like, were you the one to cause them to maybe consider everything else, or was it them? Like, how, you know, who was first, like in the learning and being curious about your identity and how you guys as a unit navigated the world?
So that's actually a really interesting question. I don't think I've ever answered before. I think that my parents, so I have a key, very childhood moment early that I feel like is a foundational moment. So long story short, my parents took myself and maybe my younger sister, also adopted, not biologically related to me, from Korea, to what I remember as a Korean culture convention. I don't know if it was here or in Lafayette, but I've tried to find information. I could not find it.
Okay.
All I remember being there, but I don't remember what we did. But the thing I remember most is how I felt after, which was just like, I was uncomfortable. I was just like, I was shamed. Like,
when you were there?
Yeah.
How old were you?
Like 7, like 5, 7, I think, in that range. It was just like a really negative experience for me. I walked away from it because I had, now thinking back, like, grown up in an environment that had kind of stigmatized that that community. And my parents, thinking that they were doing a service to me by putting me in this position, saw my reaction and then decided, well, why would we ever put him in this place?
Oh my goodness.
To do that, because we want to protect him, because it's our kid. We love him. My advice to adoptive parents now is always like, you have to continue to engage, even if your kid doesn't, because it's like, you have to model like, this is what that looks like.
Right.
However, fast forward to 2020, when I go on my own journey, it wouldn't be until 2021 that we'd have this moment where my parents, my mom specifically, would realize or have that realization for herself. She sent me a message while I was at work and was like, I'm sorry that I raised you in a colorblind household. And I realize now that I'll never understand what it's like to not be white. And like that moment was huge for me because up until then, for the last like 8 months, I had been radically vulnerable, I think, talking about the things that I had experienced. And because I was just discovering what it meant to be Asian and adopted and to grow up in this environment. And my mom, and I was podcasting, I was doing all of this live every week, and she was listening because she always supports what I does.
Yeah.
But we were not talking about what I was talking about. And it wasn't until like a mass tragedy event that happened that would kind of make me realize I was not being affirmed still, even though they were supporting me. And which would push me to record an episode where I was just basically going off on everyone that I knew. And then like a week later, she sent me that message. And since then, I have watched her go through a lot of steps forward, some steps back, but a lot of steps forward on her own.
Wow.
So like, it's easy to talk about individual things in that, but I always end up sharing more context because I feel like it's, I don't know, I share one thing and then you can think of one, like have a bias or a judgment. And I'm like, well, I want to add this part. It's like to help inform some of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my goodness.
I mean,
layers.
it's just like, again, what I've learned the most through podcasting, but like going on my own individual journey is that everybody is on their own individual journey.
Exactly.
And to try and assume or think or compare to somebody else for any reason, like does a disservice, not just to them, but to you and your own story.
Right. And all of our learning, our collective learning. So,
Well, and then that's the thing. That's a beautiful thing about humanity is that we're all different. So that means what we can learn is literally infinite because you can never sit down and talk to every person that's ever lived or lives on the earth. But if you could, I guarantee you would be one of the wisest people because you've just now had a conversation with everybody.
Yes.
And that's so I literally can't even fathom what that kind of knowledge would look like.
Oh my goodness. It's a random morbid thought, but my husband, Alan, and I remember telling him, hey, if I get we've had a lot of death lately. And I said, hey, if I get to that point where they're like, does she die or not? If I can teach and if I can learn, I'd rather be alive.
Sure.
And so that's what I told him. I don't know what kind of state that is, you know, but if I can still learn, just to your point about like lifelong learning, like that's the goal.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to put that in whatever
write that
information. In whatever will thing that I need to have written up. I like that. Yeah. Okay. So you have I talked about you did like a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion work in your professional career, but your background is in like art and like branding and marketing, advertising.
Like my work background or my school background?
Was that your study background? Like that's what you studied and then you ended up in?
So I studied advertising and photography.
Gotcha.
I have a degree I have a journalism degree. Journalism is my thing from Ball State. Yeah.
I went to Ball State for my very first semester of school to major in journalism, and then I left and went to Purdue because I was living a destabilized identity life.
All right. Well, chirp.
Okay, so I brought that up because I was wondering, well, first off with photography, I was like, were you always interested in visual art?
So I've always been into graphic design. Like from high school, I went to Brebeuf here in Indianapolis, and some art class I was taking and I learned Photoshop and I was designing and I even won an award and got to put my whatever image in the case at school. And so like, that's what I wanted to do. I was really fascinated with like what you could communicate via shapes. And so I attempted to study that at Ball State, but I didn't get into the graphic design school.
Okay.
And so I had to think, well, what is it about this that I like? You know, I actually don't have an amazing technical skill at it. I just like what it does. I like that it can influence people. It does influence people. And so I realized it's really advertising and marketing that is like my jam.
Sure.
I think that advertising is the third most powerful thing in the world. And it's shaping everything,
Yeah.
like colors and lines and text are influencing everybody to buy whatever they're buying and to sleep however long they're sleeping or not, and to make all their choices.
Yeah.
So, visual communication has been my thing.
Sure.
I've always wanted to work for Absolute. That was the goal.
Okay.
Absolute or Vogue. And those are both visual communicators. So,
okay.
yeah.
Have you achieved those dreams yet?
No, I haven't even. Oh my gosh, I could actually probably now reach out to Absolute and see if they want to do something together. That's wild. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And then Vogue, I mean, that's like, if my entrepreneurial thing doesn't go and it is, and I'll stick to that. But yeah, like doing creative stuff at Vogue would be amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so I appreciate you giving us a little bit of that context and getting to the entrepreneurial aspect of it, because I was wondering, like, I feel like since I've known of you, it feels like you're just a step ahead of most things. And I feel like I heard you in a conversation talking about you were having conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion with people well before anybody was even using the letters, even shortening it to the letters. Was that something that you realized that you needed to be doing? Like you had to step into that gap, or like, was it just like nobody else is doing it, so I'll be the first, I'll model it?
I don't think it's as conscious as nobody else is doing whatever. Like I've just been doing what needs to happen. Like that has been the thing. I remember it was Michael Kaufman who said, like, you've got have you identified your lanes? And I was like, what lanes? And then I did, and I had 3 lanes, and it was the arts, like the arts have just been around, like that's what I understand. And civic pride, Indianapolis is my place. Like this place created me. My village is here. There are remnants of me, around the city. So like civic pride's a thing. And then conversations about race. And so that became DEI. But like I was the person that was comfortable in the discomfort about race, especially in this city when, 10, 15 years ago, like it was bubbling up, but there was some discomfort around it. And where those 3 lanes meet, there was especially like, we need to, these things aren't separate. We can't talk about the arts without having conversations about race. Hello, Indiana Avenue, et cetera. Hello, history.
Yes.
And so it was really more about like, okay, I'm going to just start, I'm bringing these things up, or I'm going to have a forum or a panel or whatever, because it's just progress. Like it needs to happen. And so I've just kind of been leading with that, like a pioneering kind of, I don't even have a pioneering mindset. It's just a pioneering like behavior system.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's like you'll step into it, but you're identifying a need. And it's like, it's not that there aren't, like you said, other people. And I don't meant to be discredited of anybody doing work in this space.
Exactly.
Many people have been doing it for a long time.
Exactly.
It's just like, and in this city, sometimes it can feel like that's not really happening. So it takes like a person who's willing to be visible, but also is comfortable in the discomfort to be vulnerable, because I feel like it takes a level of vulnerability to have these conversations. And I think a lot of people are unwilling to be vulnerable, maybe not just uncomfortable, but to be
the vulnerable and in the unknown. Like,
feel safe enough to be vulnerable too. Like that's the thing too. And again, like I say a lot, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, there's another layer to this stuff, because
that's a good one.
A lot of people don't feel safe enough to be themselves. And if we want people to be brave enough to be themselves, they got to be safe enough to learn about that part of themselves first.
That's a good one. Can I offer an example?
Yes, absolutely.
In 2020, when Mayor Bowser in D.C. took it to the streets and put 30-foot yellow letters, that said Black Lives Matter on a main, in D.C., and then other cities started doing it. And then I asked Alan, I wonder if Indianapolis is going to do one. And he said, babe, if they do, it's because you did it. And I was like, what? And I was like, oh my gosh. And I just started doing it, like, whoa, like that's a scary thought. That's a weird thing. And it was weird to even like to hear.
For sure.
But to your point about being safe enough to be vulnerable, because my village is here and because I have a work history here, I could, say, hey, President Ossoly, is this a good idea? Can you help me with this? Or I can call DMD or whatever. And, and Tamika Catchings and the Urban League, they're like, hey, let's do this. So anyway, just something about like pioneering, doing a thing that feels like it needs to be done when it's scary, and feeling safe enough, having like an Alan saying you should do that, and being able to call. I remember calling Catherine Esselman, and she connected me with Stacia Murphy, and we were like, "What? You're thinking of this too? Great, let's do it." And so it's just a matter of doing the thing that needs to be done. Yeah,
I like it, but it's not just you should do it. It's that if they do it, it's because you did it. Like that's how you said it the first, and I was
that's
like, "That's
what
a bar.
Said.
That's a straight up bar right there." And I'm like, to be affirmed in that way, because it's not like. Because that's like taking the person and being like, you literally are the star, and like you are the leader of this thing that we
or at least that
needing.
Space.
In that space, yeah. And like, I think what makes great leaders are leaders that aren't like gunning or vying for that spot. It takes somebody to be like, hey, that you are doing that.
Yeah,
like,
and it's scary for some of us to be in the spotlight.
Well, once you're aware of it, it's like now you feel the burden of responsibility as you're moving in that space.
Exactly.
So you talked about like getting connected with other people who were thinking, oh, we should do that.
Yep.
I was watching a conversation you did with Leslie Bailey, and you shared the story of how you and Alan met, which was a similar like, hey, we're in Nashville at a conference. Hey, you two should know each other. You're talking about the same things.
Yeah.
It made me think about how we connect to people and are vulnerable in the way we share enough to the level that someone would be like, this person and this person should be connected. Whether that person knew you well enough or you two not well enough or not, I don't know. But that's what the story made me think of.
Yeah.
I was wondering for you, and we've talked about it a little bit about wanting to be more open and to lead and model what that looks like to be open in that way. How do you know when it's right to be more open or when you want to withhold? Like, and to be like, this is maybe not the right time or place, or just like, people don't need to know this.
Ooh, yeah. I think that's being able to read the room.
Sure.
Being a good listener takes like your whole body.
Yeah.
So when you come into a space, like you got to be like conscious of how much room you're taking up in that space. And that can be with words, that can be with the language that your body is using.
Yeah.
And so you have to just be really aware and be in tune with the other person you're in conversation with to know, like, I don't need to take up that much space right now, or this doesn't seem like a place where we need to learn by word exchange. It could be learning by proximity, and so I think it's, just being aware and conscious and respectful of the other participants and the energy in the room, and to know when you are an asset versus like a bother, or versus when like whatever you're sharing wouldn't be helpful and it wouldn't land anyway. So then it's a waste at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, people usually show like they would be a safe person to maybe bring into the circle or not sometimes. So I appreciate you sharing that. You talked about like Indianapolis home base. It's where your support network is. I was wondering what Indianapolis means to you in the context of your story.
Ooh. Well, even as I sit right here, I think about Indianapolis because I'm looking at your shirt and I'm like, whoa, we really did circulate a new meaning for gang. And that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
We got to tell the world that it means people on a journey together, and you're wearing a shirt and that's amazing. And then I glance over here and I'm like, oh, I think that's a Gary G skull.
Yep.
I'm wearing his necklace. Like, whoa, that's so cool that I've been able to work with this artist for 5 years now and discovered him, during the Black Lives Matter mural. And so we're able to just build together.
Yeah.
And then I look at this book right next to it and I see Jingo illustrated it.
So it hit both. These are two of his paintings as well. Two of his sketches.
Jingo and I have been doing this art thing in the same city for, I don't know, at least 10 years, helping each other throughout our careers. And dancing is on the book cover. And I got to be a part of the initial installation of And Dancing.
Amazing.
And then I got to be a part of raising money for her maintenance, and so Indianapolis has let me draw on it, and kind of put and integrate myself into it. And this is my place, and I feel a responsibility to kind of shape her.
For sure. I was you said earlier, like you're like, if you look around the city, you'll find little bits and pieces of you. And but people might not know that if you didn't like tell them. And like, when I was researching, I was like, part of the writing the bio was like, there's too many things to put in here. And I feel like then we'll have to talk about one of these things, because I'm like, that's amazing. And it's like, to see the list of things that you've just been in or had a hand in, I think is really incredible.
Thank you.
And like, truly, when we think about people who have had an impact on the city, like your name has to be up there with
Thank
that,
you for
with
saying
people
that.
are doing that.
After you turn, I'm 40. After you turn 40, you do start to wonder, like, the whole part, like, there's all these new people who have no clue and give zero anythings about you or your work history. And so it's weird to say, like, oh, I did that and that and that. I don't know. So Indianapolis keeps stories too. Like, the cities and places keep stories too, and in addition to people. Indianapolis
keeps stories. That sounds like a damn good tagline for people that might be thinking about what a good tagline for the city is. Anyways, okay. So thank you for sharing that. I've only got you here for a few more minutes, so I got a couple more questions and I'll let you go. But thank you so much for your time so far.
Thank you. Really, really, really. Thank you.
So you talked about the beautiful flowers. Madeline McKinnon and Frida's Flowers sponsor a segment on the show called Give Them Their Flowers, where we ask our guests to shout out a person or persons or entities or whoever they think deserve their flowers at the moment. I have a specific person that I would ask to shout out, if you don't mind.
Okay.
You're like a big family person.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've seen you share moments with your mom a lot.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could give your mom her flowers. You feel like she deserves her flowers at the moment.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. Mom grows flowers. She is a wonderful, beautiful horticulturalist. She's a farmer. She's a country girl. She's from Sparta, Illinois. And she comes from an amazing lineage of strong women. And a wonderful family community that she's made sure that I know. I love that she encourages me to know my family history, and that she has created, writings and websites and reunions so that we keep learning about who we are. I really value that. Mom is the most beautiful woman in the world. Like, she actually is like the most beautiful woman in the world. And also, she's so layered and she's so complicated, but she's so committed to her children and to progress and to learning. She loves history and science. She loves communication. And she loves me. She called me the light of her life now a couple weeks ago. And I was like, oh my goodness. So it actually makes me feel a little like I'm not doing enough. I really want to get her to a beach. I really want to take care of her. I want everything for her. And so I'm working really hard, mostly for my mom. And of course my daughters, and my bonus love son as well. But I'm working really hard so that I can take care of my mom, and because she's taken all the good care of me. Thank you for giving me a moment to say that.
Yeah, 100%. Shout out to mom. Shout out to family. And shout out to community. That is the word, the theme of the year on the show. And every time we can just find new ways to talk about community and for people to share it, I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
You. Thank you.
Thank you to Madeline, and thank you to Frida's Flowers as well for
thank
sponsoring that segment.
Yes.
Okay, so 2 more questions. What do you want to see from your perspective as just an individual from the creative community for the rest of 2025 here in the city?
In Indianapolis, what do I want to see from the creative community?
Not you as a leader of creatives, but you as generally. A person, as a spectator. Yeah, if you can put yourself in that position.
I want to see aspiration, collaboration. Innovation would be dumb to say because it just, but pride, Indianapolis is killing it in the creative sector.
Yeah.
We have hustlers that are artists. Our artists are hustlers because they're doing it in a city that doesn't have infrastructure for them, And so I always cheerlead and hype up the artists from Indianapolis because they're doing it because this is what they have to do, it's in them and they're creating. So I want to see our aspiration level rise as a city. We should be trying to do more. We should be, I don't like the demanding thing, but we should be encouraging ourselves to think higher, do more, and collaborate faster.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we could do here. We're a very special city. We have a very special history in the arts. And so like we need to use that as like a trampoline.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes. Yeah, the springboard. Let's go.
Yeah.
Aspiration, collaboration, and pride.
Yes.
I want to see those things too.
Yeah.
100%. Molly, thank you so much for coming through and sitting down for this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for about 10 hours. So last question. For folks that out there are listening and watching right now that want to support you in any way, how do they do that? How would you like them to do so?
Ooh, they could write me a love letter. I love letters and sweet notes. I love getting, letters in the mail. They could volunteer at Butter. We really need volunteers. You could send $5 to GANGGANG because we're trying to grow our individual donor base.
Okay.
You could pray. And yeah, I don't know, like be good and hug and smile.
Oh, I like those. That's a great way to wrap them up. Like, I think that's a good, be kind, be good, hug, smile, people, donate $5, volunteer for Butter. Butter is an amazing. Yeah, I have so many things to talk to you about with the stuff that you guys have done. And that's why, and write the love letter. Molly, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait for people to hear all the wonderful stuff that you're doing and just to learn a little bit more about why you do what you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for sharing part of your story too.
Absolutely.
It's been wonderful.
Thanks for asking. For everybody else, new episodes every Tuesday on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, conversationpeacepod.com for more, for everything else. And then at Conversation Peace Pod on Instagram for the social media stuff. Until next time, that's been David Durham on audio and video. So shout out to him, shout out Mike Lee and John Overton, who are on break. Shout out to Pattern and the Studs for this beautiful space. Shout out to Madeline McKinnon and Frida's Flowers for the flowers. Shout out to Molly Bacon for being an incredible guest. And shout out to me for being your host. I am Patrick Armstrong, and this has been Conversation Peace. We'll see y'all soon.